Fly, you fools! Hello and welcome to the Friday Fantasy Show from the Bottled Imp, exploring the realms of fantasy. My name is Ken Boyter and today we're going to take a look at Lord of the Rings. Yes, it's the biggie. It's the biggie. Look at this, Lord of the Rings. Now, as you probably know, Lord of the Rings is actually 3 novels, 3 parts to it. And so what we're going to be doing is we're going to look at part 1, which is the Fellowship of the Ring, today. Then next week it's going to be part 2, which is the Two Towers. And then the week after that, it's going to be part 3, which is the Return of the King. These are epics. These are the big ones. I don't think there's been any other fantasy story that has had so much influence over a whole genre. In fact, it's very difficult to think of anything else in any other genre that's had that much of an influence. I'm sure there is something out there, but I just can't think of it. So yes, this was first released in 2001. It was directed by Peter Jackson, and it has a whole host of stars in it. So let's just find out just what is the Lord of the Rings. Lord of the Rings, oh yes. Now for those of you that haven't seen Lord of the Rings, and I can't imagine there's that many of you, although there might be, they are all based on, obviously, the books which were first published in 1954. So really when you think about it, it's not that later on that these films are made. You know, we're talking what, nearly 50 years? I can't work it out. 47 years? Is that how long? So really, that's not that far from when the books were actually published. But because the influence has been so huge, it just feels like Lord of the Rings has been around forever. It really does feel like a story that is an ancient myth and an ancient story. So just what is the setup of Lord of the Rings? Well, it's all set in the fictional world of Middle-earth. And the story follows a hobbit. Now, a hobbit is like a halfling, not quite a dwarf, but a halfling who has big, hairy feet. That's kind of one of the main physical features. And they're quite short, but they do love the home life. Now, this hobbit is called Frodo Baggins, and he has been given a ring. I don't want to go into too many of the spoilers. Obviously, I'll try not to do any spoilers if you haven't seen this. But the ring is a magical ring, and he's been given this ring to safeguard. For this ring is the most powerful ring across the land, and it was created by the Dark Lord Sauron. Now, Sauron, there's a lot of history in all of this, but Sauron has been banished. There was a massive, huge battle, and for one thing or another, he got banished into the nether regions, into another dimension. But he is waiting, he's biding his time, he's trying to grow back his power in order to get his physical body back, in order to come across Middle-earth and destroy everything in its wake. But he can't do it just alone. He needs allies, he needs other people to help him out who are in the physical world, in the Middle-earth, and he also needs this one ring, because the one ring is the ultimate weapon. This one ring controls other rings. Now, he made other rings as well and gave them as gifts. Remember, this was when he was in his physical body. Gave them gifts to all the leaders of the free people. But because he's, a Dark Lord, he tricked them. Yeah, I know, he tricked them. He tricked them because this ring that he had controls all the other rings. And so it's kind of like a mind control. He would corrupt them with this one ring. But there is hope, because guided by a powerful wizard called Gandalf, the ring is decided that it's best destroyed from where it was made, which is Mount Doom in Mordor. The fires, they forged it in the fires of Mount Doom. So that is the quest. It befalls Frodo and some friends. Again, I'm rattling through this. I don't want to give too many spoilers away, but there's a fellowship that is formed of various leaders of the free cities and people that would be useful. I don't know how to describe them. Adventurers? Yeah, they're not all adventurers, but they're people that have got skills, put it that way. And they decide to set off to destroy this one ring and put it into the fires of Mordor. Simple? Oh, my friends. There are many leagues from Hobbiton, which is based in the Shire, to Mordor. So it's an epic, epic journey that they undertake. They best get a shift on then, eh? Because the Dark Lord Sauron kind of has a feeling, he doesn't quite know where the ring is, but he has this sort of, he can sense, he's got this big floaty eye on top of a tower that can kind of see, he kind of feels where it is. So he's looking for this ring, and he kind of thinks, he finds out that Bilbo has given the ring. Bilbo Baggins is actually Frodo's uncle. I told you it was complicated. And Bilbo has passed the ring down to Frodo, and Frodo, he sort of knows that a halfling, a hobbit, has this ring. There are so many themes in Lord of the Rings. I'm not going to be able to get through them all. There's so much that I could say about this film, but we do try to keep this episode short. We don't always win on that episode there, on that situation. But anyway, let's crack on with the theme. So there are so many. There's power and domination and control, and as touched upon there, it's all about the rings. It's all about how can you control people? How can you dominate them? How can you gain power over them? Now, as I say, the Dark Lord, he forges this ring, and it's a ring of corruption, ultimately. It sort of takes your deepest, darkest desires and really pushes them up to the extreme. So he wants this ring back because ultimately he would, gain that domination and that control. But obviously that's not necessarily going to be enough. Mind control isn't enough because you still need to kind of dominate in other ways. Now, kings and queens, of yore used to do this. It would basically who has the largest army, who has the more technical nous, who has the better weapons, the technical, who's winning the arms race, if you like, the technical ability, the technical skill of all these weapons, who has the better weapons. So obviously a ring, if that can mind control and corrupt people, that's a pretty powerful weapon. So you do it through force and you do it through violence, but also you do it through mind control as well. You try to crush all the hope in people. And I guess once a person has been corrupted, once they start going down, if you appeal to their greed, for example, if you promise them, that you could be a lord, not quite a king because I'm the king or I'm the emperor, but you could be an earl, I'll give you a castle if you go and just defeat this and go and take the land. Then of course things that person who is meant to be there for the people gets corrupted. He then starts corrupting all his people or her people, and they start then it spreads out like an evil virus. So again, that's how it was done. It's a sort of through the mind, through corruption, through violence, and through kind of crushing people's spirits, because once if somebody gives up hope, then there's no will to fight and defend themselves anymore. There is a theme of, as we mentioned before with hobbits, there's that homely values, the simple pleasures in lives, the kind of natural way of living, being in touch with nature. So, as I mentioned before, Bilbo and Frodo Baggins, they are related, and they are hobbits, and they live in a really beautiful place. It's all green, it's very naturalistic, there's rivers and green lands and fertile lands to grow things, and they like the simple pleasures in life. They're not trying to dominate the world, they just get on with their day-to-day living. They like their food and their ale. I mean, who doesn't, to be honest? They also like pipeweed. I'm not sure how healthy that is for them, but anyway, they like pipeweed. They like their family, that's very important to them. They like the peace and quiet. They like nature, good soil, plants, trees, things that grow, basically. And so they just celebrate a simple life. They're not that curious about going out and going, holiday doesn't really exist, really. So why would you need to go to different places? If you live in a safe environment, why would you extend yourself and go somewhere that you don't know the people, you don't know what they're like? So they like all that type of thing. It's a more natural way of living. It's a simple way of living. It's a stress-free. That's really what they're looking for. Just sitting by their cozy fires. Smoking on the pipeweed, eating some cheese, eating a pie. What's not to like, really? To be honest, they like to be connected to their animals. And they would I guess they would raise animals, and if they were going to eat them, then at least they would have them in big open fields. It's not all this battery farming and cruelty to animals, anything like that. But it would be, you'd have animals on your land, and you would be hopefully with nature. You'd be tending the earth. So it's basically, I guess ultimately what I'm trying to say is that it's having your soul connected to the place where you live, to the earth. And I guess in a more spiritual sense, it's a connection to the whole earth, the whole, your whole being connected and living in harmony with nature. So that's very, very appealing. That sort of gives it, and at the beginning of the film, again, without giving too much away, that they kind of set all that feeling up. And it is very, very appealing. It kind of creates this nostalgic feeling. Another theme is, of course, fellowship and friendship. It's called the Fellowship of the Ring. And that's for a reason. All the way through this, fellowship and friendship is a strong, strong theme. It starts off small. You get introduced to a couple of characters. You've got Bilbo Baggins and Gandalf. They went on a little bit of an adventure previously, so they've got a strong friendship there. Bilbo and Frodo, their uncle and nephew, they get on very well. They enjoy the same things. They enjoy each other's company. You got Frodo and Samwise Gamgee, who are friends anyway. If you live in Hobbiton, you live in the Shire, you're going to know pretty much everybody. Obviously, you don't get like normal. You wouldn't get on with everybody, but there are genuine friends that you would have. So Samwise is a gardener, and I don't want to spoil the plot too much, but Frodo and Sam, they're the ones that initially take the ring to the elves, and so obviously their friendship develops even stronger, and it's a friendship that gets taken out of context as well, because they've only been friends in the context of where they live. So it starts off small. You got these three sets of two friendships. And then it sort of has to build, because as they go on their quest and the dangers become more and more apparent, then they need more and more friends. You need allies. And it does a good job of sort of saying, look, we're all, so when they meet these new friends as such, they're not necessarily friends to begin with, they're strangers. And therefore you've got to earn that friendship. You've got to sort of put your trust in somebody, you need to earn the friendship. So this quest that they have to go on where they take the ring, they know that it's going to be testing. They know that the two hobbits, Frodo and Sam, are going to need help. And it comes from, sort of different places. Again, I don't want to give too much away. So it is out of necessity, Frodo and Sam are going to go further and actually go to Mount Doom, because they're not necessarily, that wasn't always the case. They were just going to take it to the elves. That was the original idea. But they decided, well, no, you need friends. So you need this big fellowship that have all got different skills, so they all complement each other in that respect. So that is a theme that runs not just through this part, but also part 2 and part 3 as well. And another thing that runs through all 3 parts, a lot of these themes do intertwine and they go back and revisit it, maybe a slightly different angle, is war. Yeah, the big theme of war. It's a heavy theme. It's a realistic theme. Well, all these themes are realistic, but the way it's portrayed is very, very realistic as well. How can you gain dominance? As I say, through violence, and even the threat of war as well. You could just be massing an army. People don't necessarily know you wouldn't have. That could just be a trick. Maybe you've got no plans to actually invade, but if you have an army, people are certainly not going to invade you. Well, that's the theory anyway, isn't it? So what is war normally about? Well, wars can be triggered by lots of different things, but war ultimately would be about freedom, wouldn't it? It's about being dominated and also defending your freedom, or gaining your freedom, because you could be dominated already and you need to gain your freedom. So in a way you could say it's good versus evil. I mean, that is certainly a massive theme within this as well, but I think that's to do with war and the corruption of people's hearts and what's in their hearts. So you've got the macro theme of the big theme of war, good versus evil, but also there's the internal struggle of good versus evil inside each of us. We each have a choice whether to be corrupt or follow the good path. So if you want to dominate somebody, surely that is to do with evil. That's a corruption. Surely that's not certainly not a nice thing to do. So it's to do with domination and to do with freedom. And if it also includes the values that you hold close, such as democracy, because you could say, yeah, but hang on, no, we're going to dominate this land, we're going to take this land over, but look what we're bringing to these people, these, stupid people, they haven't got this, they haven't got that, they don't understand. Yeah, but that might not be the case. They might not be as far as you in terms of culture and civilization, but that doesn't mean that they need to be dominated, that they want that technology, they want your way of life. Because war can also bring around changes in culture, and the way people think, and customs and identity. So it's all tied into all of those. So it's not necessarily we don't want to be dominated because we don't want your way of thinking, your technology. You've got to let people have make their own mistakes, but also develop in the way that they're developing. And that does mean their own technology, their own civilization, their own customs, their own cultures, and their own identity. Your culture does make up a big part of your identity. So for another country or another group of people to try and dominate and wipe that out, that's got to be evil, isn't it? That's devastating. So that does run all the way through all three films. There's also spirituality. There's a massive, strong theme of spirituality that runs all the way through. Yes, there is a lot of action, there's a lot of fighting, there's a lot of battles that go on, so ultimately I guess these films are action films, but I don't always see them as action films because there's a lot of deep spirituality that runs through, again, all these parts of the film. And it touches very, very deep. It touches all aspects of all the decisions that all the characters make. And I've watched these films quite a few times now, and I always think, yeah, the magic is the spirituality. So when there's magic being performed in these films, it's actually to do with spirituality. Magic is what energy does exist and flow around us. On Earth you've got the magnetic field. It's proven there's energy that does flow through us. So that really is magic, isn't it? That's just humans tapping into magic. Anyway, maybe that's a whole different episode. So I just love that fact. And also, the elves seem to be the ones that really understand the spirituality or the magic side of life. And they're kind of, they're akin to gods, really. They're very spiritual, they're very mature, they're very evolved beings, evolved souls. And they just understand, the nature of energy and magic and how powerful it really is. It's a powerful force. But also they understand that this energy is kind of neutral. And it's how you, as a person, interpret it and how you use it. So you can use this energy and tap into it for good or for evil. You could corrupt the energy and use it for your own ends in that respect, for evil purposes. And also this energy connects everything. It connects people, it connects creatures, plants, trees, everything, the water, the earth, the rocks, it permeates into every single atom. So, as I say, it can be corrupted. So nature can be corrupted. Without trying not to give too much away. You could have, for example, an evil wizard corrupting and using nature, using birds to do their bidding, to be spies, for example. That might happen. But yeah, see, if you know what I mean there, that you could use, so the birds themselves aren't necessarily evil, they're just being corrupted, being mind controlled. But this spirituality runs all the way through it. So the light is as strong as the dark, and I guess you could say the dark is as strong as the light. Sort of. So there's that eternal struggle that goes on. Loads more themes. Haven't got time to go into them, obviously. Stories and myths. There's layers upon layers of ancient myths and creation stories, about Middle-earth, and it goes back into the history of, and it follows the line of kings, and it follows the line of dwarves and elves, and it talks about all the history there. Stories within stories. As I say, the nature, how it shapes people, and the environment can shape culture and identity, and it also, as I say, mentioned how it can be corrupted. Survival, if you're going to go on a big quest like this and you're being attacked, you're being pursued, you're being followed, you've got to have your wits about you and use survival techniques. Can you survive? There's hope, haven't even touched on hope. There's also loss in the film, loss of friends and loved ones, and loss of a childhood, maybe loss of your normal life, loss of your identity, because if your homeland gets invaded, or you lose that, or you have to leave that, then what does that do to your identity? So there's loads and loads of themes that we haven't even touched on. So overall, wow. I mean, wow. When I sort of thought, should I review Lord of the Rings? I mean, there's so much been said. So many people have seen this. And I thought, well, no, I still will, because, you know, we're the Bottled Imp. We explore the realms of fantasy. And this is the biggie. This is possibly the only thing I can think of, the only fantasy film, well, they're books really, aren't they? And these are the films that are based on the books, that's had this much influence. They are so realistic. The film, the way that Peter Jackson, who directed it, I think I saw a documentary it was a long time ago, where he said he wanted to make history. He did, you know, yes, it's fantasy, but it was real. It's history. We're making history. So everything had to be real. And the more real you make fantasy, the more then that people will believe the fantasy elements of it. So when you start, you know, people start casting magic with staffs and all of that, and you've got weird creatures, it just seems normal. It seems, yeah, this fits this part of the world. This fits it because everything else is so real. And I think they had so much love and care and attention in this film that it just shows all the detail. I've watched lots of documentaries. The detail they went to when they did people's costumes. The costume department designed like slips and undershirts and vests for people that were all intricate. No one was going to see them, certainly not the cameras. Yeah, it was to give the actors that sense of their character, everything about it, everything. And all the chainmail was properly made. It wasn't just fake chainmail, it was proper chainmail. Everything, all the swords were forged, it was beautifully made, and it just shows the characters, we care for them. Hooray. There's a few fantasy films out there you just don't really care for them, and that is what is at the heart of this. It's the characters and the story. The story is gripping and engaging, the characters are well-rounded, you believe in them, you want them to succeed or fail, I guess, depending on which side you are. But, you know, they're multifaceted characters. They've got flaws. You know, no one's perfect. They make mistakes. But ultimately, you feel like you are on the quest with them. And what a quest. At the end of part one, you feel, wow, I've been through the ringer here. The film lets you be in the scenes with you. It is a masterpiece of filmmaking. The pacing is perfect. I mean, there's two versions. There's the cinema release, which is long enough. I think that's about 2.5 hours. This is 3. I watched the extended versions on DVD. I think they're 3 hours 45. I didn't feel bored. I didn't feel any part of the film sagged. I was engaged in every scene. I didn't want it to end. I remember watching it originally at the cinema. It's 2.5 hours, and thinking, oh no, don't finish. I want it to carry on. So they do a beautiful job, even though it's split into 3 parts. There's still beginning, middle, end. They wrap things up neatly, but you feel like, yeah, I want to go on. I want to carry on with this. I want to know what happens. I want to know, do they succeed? Do they fail? What happens? And that is a mark. That you can't ask for much more. That's what you want. You want the audience to care for the characters, and you definitely do. There's lots of twists and turns in the story. That, again, keeps you engaged. Production values are amazing. And the look of it, just want to mention John Howe and Alan Lee, who have been drawing Hobbits and Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit for years and years and years. They came on board, they did a lot of the production design, so the look and the feel of it is basically their drawings, their paintings, their vision, really. And it's beautiful, it's perfect. I can't think of anything that I would really change, I think I'm quite creative, but no, it's perfect. It's so inspiring as well. The acting is fantastic, you really get drawn in. It does feel like you've gone on a massive, massive journey. I would totally recommend this. There's a few facts I just want to say that the music's amazing by Howard Shore. I almost forgot about that. It's just so beautiful. The budget was $93 million, which is, is a lot of money. And this is 2001. The worldwide takings box office was 871 million. So that's, you don't sell that many tickets without having a good film on your hands. Tolkien said his works were not strictly allegory of any kind, but were open to interpretation as the reader saw it. So he was saying, bring your own interpretation to it. I mean, I've hardly touched on this at all because it's such an epic story. There's the industrialization part of it as well. There's the First World War influences, because Tolkien went, there's war influences that he could bring to it as well. It was nominated for 13 Oscars. and it won 4. I think it should have won more. It has a Rotten Tomato approval rating of 91%. So, you know, that's a lot of people, a lot of critics have rated it. 91%, that's quite difficult to get that amount of consensus. So Lord of the Rings, wow, if you've not seen it, oh, I'm so jealous, you're in for a big, big treat. Go watch it now. Wow, as I keep saying, wow. And wow, I've had the pleasure of seeing it 3 times, all 3 films, 3 times at the cinema. Once when they first came out, and then twice when I went there as back-to-back. A whole day, just back-to-back films. Absolutely loved it. Didn't want to leave the cinema. We have done other reviews that are connected to Lord of the Rings. So we've done the Hobbit BBC radio dramatisation. Check that out. It's very, very good. We've also reviewed the Hobbit novel as well, and also the Lord of the Rings 1978 animated version. And we have chatted about Middle-earth Festival that happens every year up in Birmingham, because obviously Tolkien lived around Birmingham when he was younger. So thank you so much for watching. We've got so many other reviews as well, so check all those out. And remember to spread the word of the Bottled Imp. Keep it unreal, especially if you're a Hobbit.